Today's interview is with Tyler Cauble. Tyler has a really interesting story, a fascinating story actually to me. Has had a lot of success. He started out working construction for his granddad, soon then went into commercial leasing, mainly office, and kind of learned that space. And then sort of ventured out on his own and is taking down some really cool projects, some really big projects, and some really interesting projects as well. So he talks about all of that, all of what he learned along the way as well. So really interesting interview. Make sure you stick around for all of that. As always, like and subscribe on Wrestling with Real Estate, the YouTube channel. Go to the WWRE Podcast and give me a 5-star rating and write me a review if you think it's worthy. And I'm looking to speak to as many of you as possible. If you're interested in real estate, in whatever capacity that is, I'd love to speak to you, see if there's any way whatsoever I can help you. If you go to the link in the description down below, or you go to wrestlingwithrealestate.com and sign up there, we can jump on a 30-minute call and you can tell me all about your real estate hopes and dreams and ambitions, and hopefully there's some way that I can help you. But before that, stick around for today's phenomenal interview with Tyler Cauble. Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multifamily real estate investor, Barri Griffiths. Now today, we have Tyler Cauble with us today. How are you doing, Tyler?
Barry, doing well, man. Ready to wrestle with you over some real estate.
Yes, let's do it, man. Let's do it. Let's tag team. Let's work together. I'd rather work with you than against
you. Yeah, I'm all about it.
Let's take down some brokers and some auctions or whatever.
Right.
Cool. Well, Tyler, thanks for making the time today, man. I really appreciate you coming on the show. We were talking a little bit before. You got some really cool projects that we're going to dive into. But before all that, do you want to give us an idea about your background, kind of what you've been up to, what your current focus is, all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a proud college dropout, moved back to Nashville, started working in construction, and a few months into that, actually got a job offer from a development company to come be their in-house leasing agent for some commercial properties that they owned, a shopping center and an office building in downtown Nashville, and just decided to take that offer. So ran with it. They paid for me to get my real estate license, and that was back in 2013, and I was, 21 at the time when I started. And when about 2 years into that, I stabilized those two properties and realized I'd worked myself out of a job. So I started thinking, well, what else am I going to do? And since it was a small boutique development company, I'd been sitting in on these development and construction meetings every week for 2 years. And so I pretty much learned how to put a deal together and run it. So I went out and found a piece of dirt, did my first development, which was 42 townhomes just southwest of Nashville in Bellevue. And we were off to the races from there. February of 2018, I started my own firm. Started with the Cauble Group, which is a commercial real estate brokerage here in Nashville. 6 months later, I started a commercial property management company called Parasol. And 6 months after that, started buying office buildings and retail buildings in Nashville with a focus on value add. So essentially doing the BRRRR strategy, but for commercial properties. And now we're getting back into development. So we've got a number of development and redevelopment projects that we're working on here in Nashville.
Wow. Awesome story, man. Awesome story. First and foremost, I want to say you've actually got a cool voice as well. I don't know if you've been told that before. You've got a great
voice. Yeah. I've got a client of mine that actually does a lot of video work, and they bring me in to do voiceovers for Killcliff and some of these other companies. I'm like, absolutely. Let's make some money with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. If it's a tool you have, you might as well use it. That's awesome.
Thank you.
It was funny. You were saying college dropout. I don't know if you saw it. I was pointing at myself when you were saying that.
You one too?
I'm one too. Yeah, I tried twice, 2 years in a row to do it, and I probably didn't make it past Christmas either year. It just I just went to college because I thought it was what I had to do, right? What I should do, what it meant to be successful, to have that path to success. I don't know what it was for you, but school just wasn't for me. I don't know if I just didn't have the discipline. It just didn't resonate at all with me. I don't know if you had a similar issue or what it was with you.
Yeah, I mean, it just didn't really click for me. I went to the University of Tennessee, and back at that time, I mean, with the football team was terrible. I was taking classes I'd already taken in high school, and my fraternity got kicked off campus. So I was like, what's even the point of being here?
Yeah. Do you play football do you just?
No. I looked at going to play lacrosse in a D3 school when I was back in high school, but I decided I'd rather go party in college.
Smart man. Tell me about lacrosse quickly. I know this is a real estate show, but lacrosse is a brutal sport, right? We don't have it in the UK really. It's like non-existent to us. So it's like when I came here, I didn't really understand it, and everyone I spoke to said it's brutal. It's like one of the roughest.
You guys would love it. You would love it. It's basically like hockey on land. It's a lot of fun, man. It is brutal. There's white padding. You're hitting each other with sticks, and the whole point is to get the ball in the goal. So it's a lot of fun, man.
I need to go watch a game live. I'm sure I would be hooked if I started going. Well, cool. Well,
yeah.
So just like me, we both dropped out of college, kind of figured out it wasn't for us. What made you go into construction? I did the same thing. I ended up in construction, but the reason I ended up in construction was because my dad owned a small construction company. I was like, what else am I going to do right now? I guess I'll go work for my dad, right? That's kind of how it happened for me. But I don't know what drew you to construction?
That's funny. It was basically the same thing. My grandfather owned a construction company. And so I'd grown up working for him in the summers since I was 12. So it was like, yeah, naturally, I'm just going to go, take over my grandfather's construction company and grow that like crazy,
Yeah. But then you said you transitioned into working for, what happened with that transition? What kind of took you away?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So the summer between high school and going to UT, I actually got into sales, and I made 30 grand that summer. And, that's a lot of money now. That was a lot of money back then. And so, for an 18-year-old, right? So I was sitting in class one day at UT just thinking, man, if I annualize my income, I'm making six figures a year. What am I doing here? So anyway, a developer that I had sold to here in Nashville, when I was working at that job, found out that I was back in town, and they liked my sales skills. So they called me basically when I was working for my grandfather and kind of offered me this job. And so I had to have that conversation with my grandfather. I was like, what do you think? Should I take it? And he goes, well, yeah, that's kind of a unique opportunity. You should go with it. And so that's kind of how I got into commercial real estate. I fell into it. I was not intentional about this at all.
That's kind of cool though. But that's nice of your granddad as well. Was your granddad not, did he have anyone else to pass down the business to him, or did he not care so much? Because I was in somewhat of a similar situation, because my great granddad actually started my dad's company. So my great granddad started it, passed it on to my granddad. Granddad passed it on to my dad. It was always the idea, I think, from every generation was to pass it down. And I always felt that pressure, always to kind of carry that on. And even in the later stages of my granddad's life, when I would go visit him and I was living in the US and I had all this success, he would always ask me, when are you coming back to work for the business? Because he'd worked his ass off, right, to keep that business, because his dad died young. He didn't know anything about his business. He'd worked, 14, 16, 18-hour days to keep that business going. And he wanted to see that legacy continue. And I felt that pressure, but it was hard for me because it just wasn't for me, right? I just couldn't do it. It just wasn't for me. And luckily, my dad has a brother who has a son, who's my cousin, obviously, who's going to continue that legacy. So thankfully it's continuing. But did you feel any of that kind of pressure along those lines?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Of course you want to take something that's basically your family legacy, right? And continue that on. And so, it was a sad day when my grandfather closed down the construction company, because I knew if I was going to take that job in commercial real estate, that my grandfather would be shutting his company down. And so that was tough because, the company had been open since, I think, 1972. So, I have an uncle, but my uncle just wasn't interested in taking over the company and doing anything with it. So, it was time to shut it down.
Yeah. But sometimes, unfortunately, you just have to do what's right for you, right? It's that challenge of, you can't always let expectations take over your life, right? Because unfortunately, maybe if you kept on working, I don't know. I know if I probably would have kept on working that business, I wouldn't have been very happy. I don't think I would have been nowhere near as happy and as successful as I am. So unfortunately, sometimes you've got to do what's best for you, right? But then you went into leasing, right? And sales. You said you were pretty good at sales. Where do you think that did you train in that? Did you just learn it? Did you just have it? Where do you think that skill came from?
Yeah, I mean, I think naturally, I have a personality that's well suited for sales. I mean, it's very easy for me to just sit down and relate to somebody and have a conversation with them, and it's so natural for me because I mean, I was the sales guy that was like, look, you don't need this because this is overkill for you. This is more of what's in line with what your needs are, and here's why I feel that way. And so, when you take that approach and you're being genuine and honest with people, you're not really selling them. You're just showing them what's best for them, and they make the decision. And that's really the best way to approach it. I mean, I always sell something that I believe in. And so I will not take on a project that I don't believe in because I can't sell it. It just feels disingenuous. But I had some actual sales training at that company, but man, I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to personality. Can you just sit down and have an honest conversation with people? I mean, that's really what it is.
I always, I feel completely the same. I think the best salespeople are the people who aren't trying to sell, right? And that word sell, it just means all kinds of different stuff. But if we just mean it in its literal terms, trying to sell someone, trying desperately to sell you whatever my product is, whether, like you said, it suits them or not, or you just provide them with the information, honest, genuine, heartfelt conversation, right? Get to know people and all that stuff. I think that's where the magic happens. I think people, for one, if someone's trying to sell me, I feel it straight away, and instantly I push back, right? Whether it's a good product for me or not, if they're pushing that sales hard, I kind of instantly hold back. But if I'm having a good conversation with someone and they're honest and genuine, and they tell me, hey, like you said, well, this might not be the best for you. This is why it might fit, but if it doesn't, great, And I think I really think that's always the best point of sales. I think, and I think it's you figured that out yourself, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely true, and it's one of those things like build as much rapport with someone as you can before you really start getting into talking anything else. I mean, there were times where we'll have conversations for 30, 45, 60 minutes before you even really start talking about the product or even talking about the space, because you find so many different avenues to connect on. And by the time that you do start talking business, you're talking business as friends. And that's a completely different conversation, right? It's not a pitch anymore. It's just literally, okay, well, here's my concerns. Okay, well, here's how I feel, we can suit that. And it's more of a conversation instead of a pitch.
Yeah. So what were you leasing? So you said you worked for a commercial developer, right? As a leasing agent. What were you?
Right.
Was it multifamily, office, retail?
So it was office, retail, and industrial. So I actually kind of cut my teeth on all asset types, which was really, really cool. Not multifamily. They were developing multifamily, but we hired a commercial, multifamily property management companies to do that. But it was the retail that I had was a 150,000 square foot shopping center. The office building that I had was a 57,000 square foot office building. And then we had a couple 100,000 square feet of industrial. So it was kind of all over the place.
So some big projects then. It was quite a bit of space to lease up. Well, were you what was the strategy behind it? I know in terms of the actual sales part, in terms of sitting down and talking with them and kind of creating that rapport. But outside of that, initially to decide who was a good fit, was that on you, or did you just go out and once they'd identified the people that they wanted in those spaces, was it then your job to convert, or how did it all work? I guess is the question I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean it was trial by fire, man. They just threw me in, and I was like, "What do I do?" And they said, "Go find us a tenant, and we'll show you." I was like, "Wow, all right." So, I mean, I sat in the office reading every book I could on commercial real estate, and then started knocking on doors, cold calling. I'd go and hand out flyers. I mean, I did everything I could, and we started. It took me 6 months before I closed my first deal, but then after that, it really started to snowball. But yeah, in the beginning, man, it's a lot of hard work because you don't have a reputation, you don't have a database, you don't have a network. So it was I would never go back to that part. I mean, if I had to completely start all over again, man, I don't know that I'd start off as a leasing agent. It's tough work.
Yeah, but I'm sure it was an extremely good learning experience, right? I'm sure you learned a lot during that time.
Oh, you learn a ton. I learned so much. And I mean, the reason that our brokerage is so good at leasing space today is because I went through all of that back then. I had to get creative, right? I mean, I was coming at it from a completely different perspective. I didn't have a big commercial real estate shop showing me what to do or telling me what to do. It was kind of like a go find tenants and, we'll figure it out. So, that's how I got the whole marketing side of my, my business really honed in, because I had to go out and practice that every day. And so, I started putting together, you know, infographics and stuff like that. And that's how we got into Instagram. And that's why I decided to write the book. And then that's why we started a YouTube channel. And, there's all these different ways that we kind of, you can go out and hunt, right, for a tenant, which I did not enjoy. I mean, that's going out and knocking on doors and cold calling, or you can fish. But if you're going to catch enough fish, you've got to have so many lines out there that you're catching fish all the time, right? So that's why I started coming up with all these different streams of how to find different clients. And so, Instagram worked really well for us early on. And the great thing about a platform like that is, when people reach out to you, they're already sold on you, right? Like they get to follow you, they get to see who you are, they're completely sold on you. And so it's not you're not selling them on why they should work with you. You're literally just closing the deal.
How were you using Instagram? Because Instagram's an interesting one, right? You post an interesting post, right? But there's so much more that goes into it than that, right? You've got to post once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, whatever that decision is. But there's so much more that goes into it from that, right? What was your high-level Instagram strategy at that time?
Yeah, so I kind of took the influencer approach, which, it was not my style. Like I didn't even have an Instagram before I started one for business. And so it was all kind of new for me. But I decided to take the influencer approach. And so my story was kind of like a, watch behind the scenes of commercial real estate in Nashville from a native that's going through the process. And so, I was never just posting buildings and pitching, hey, lease this from me, or, hey, this building's for sale, or, hey, buy a building with me, or whatever. Like I never, ever did that, because nobody wants to follow a page and just get sales copy shoved down their throats. Right. So what I did was I gave everybody a reason to follow me. Everybody wants to know what's happening in that building down there. Is that, what company is opening their second restaurant? There's all kinds of things like that people would rather know. And it's always fascinating. And so that was the approach I took, was like, look, I'm going to give you the behind the scenes of commercial real estate, and here's how it works. And so I kind of just told the story of that behind the scenes, and that's what worked. And that's why I got the following that I did.
That's interesting. Yeah, as you're saying that, I'm thinking, yeah, I would be interested too, because you always, as an investor or as a person that's interested in real estate, you pass buildings and you see, I wonder what's there, what's going on with this, right? And as you said, if you just say this building for lease, blah, 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 right? Yeah, you might get some, but you want to spike that interest. And that was smart of you to think, what are people interested in, right? That's kind of, it's the same with when you're trying to come up with a business or product, right? You have to figure out what the market needs, right? And you figured out what the market wanted, and you kind of went about it as that approach. So that's kind of cool. Was there a way, did you, out of interest, did you grow your Instagram, or did you just let it happen organically? Was there some strategies you went after?
Yeah, so there was a strategy. So this was pretty interesting. So I knew that with my page, it would take forever for people to care about who I am and start following me, because I'm a nobody. So what I decided to do was start another Instagram account called Architecture Nashville, which now has like 40,000 followers on it. But basically it was an Instagram account related to what I was doing, where I could show off pictures of the Nashville skyline and beautiful photos from other people and give them credit. And then what I would do is that account took off, because everybody wants to see that kind of stuff. Everybody that loves Nashville wants to see beautiful pictures of Nashville. And so then what I started doing was giveaways on that larger Instagram account to, whoever, like canvas paintings of the pictures that we were sharing. We'll do a giveaway. The winner gets, this canvas, but you gotta tag 2 friends and follow Commercial in Nashville. And that was my other Instagram handle. And so that was how I grew it so fast.
Man, that's genius. You're a genius. I love that, because like you said, right, even though with the main Instagram page that you wanted to grow, and that you was part of that commercial leasing agent, even if you figure out what the people want to see, you've still got to get in front of them, right? You can post the greatest stuff in the world, but if nobody's following you, right? It's like, I always hear people say, oh yeah, I'm going to make a YouTube video and I'm going to go viral and I'm going to grow my page. Well, you can make the best YouTube video in the world, the most entertaining stuff you've ever seen in your life. But if you have 0 subscribers, 0 views, it doesn't matter. It's like it never happened, and it's kind of the same. So you figured out. That's so smart, and that's so cool that you figured out not only how to grow that page, but then how to link it back to the other one. So I love that, man. That was so smart of you.
Yeah. So coming from Nashville, that reminded me of a like phrase that you'll hear here every now. Well, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one that's ever heard this, but it's the greatest guitar player ever has never been heard because he sits in his room and plays by himself.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you can be the greatest at something, but if you don't have an audience, it doesn't matter. And if you don't have a way to get in front of an audience, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So that was the thing. It was like, I think that I can do really well with this commercial real estate stuff on Instagram. But I've got to figure out how to get people to follow me. And so it literally came out of that thought process.
Well, that's a cool strategy that anyone can kind of use. Actually, they can kind of steal that from you. Maybe you should patent it. So that
yeah, right.
Offer free online coaching with it.
Yeah, seriously. It worked. It works. I'm sure it would still work today.
Yeah.
Well, because now we have so much more capability on Instagram, right? Like when I first got started, we didn't have stories. And so now we have stories, and now we've got reels, and you've got IGTV and all this stuff. So now we'll like take YouTube videos and we'll post those on IGTV. So, there's a lot of that kind of stuff where you can create all sorts of different content for different users on different platforms and, interact with your people.
Yeah. Social media is just incredible to what it's grown today, right? It's just, if you're trying to market and advertise stuff, and if you're not on social media and growing your social media following, you're really missing out, because it's free to start off with, right? There's obviously there's paid ads and all this kind of stuff, but just creating an account and growing your following there, that's pretty much free if you're able to do it that way, right? It's just unbelievable. And what do people do all day? I know I waste way too much time on Instagram and Facebook myself, right? Like most people. So it's just there. People always, and it's just, I think it's growing, not going to get any less, right? People are on social media more than they ever have been and will be in the future, I'm sure.
Well, it gives you this hyper unique platform that people have never had before. I mean, you think about, so I've got a little over 12,000 followers, and I can go and post a photo, and I know that, X amount of my followers will see that. Let's say based on YouTube algorithms, it's like typically 2,000 to 4,000 people of 2,000 to 4,000 of my followers will actually see a photo. So what would you have had to have done 15 years ago to just post something and have 2,000 to 4,000 people see that? You have to pay for an expensive ad in a magazine or something like that. And it's crazy that we have that at our fingertips for free. I mean, we're diving all in on YouTube right now because video content is massive. And it's amazing what people can do with that platform. If you think about what YouTube is offering, you're basically this massive production company, but you're an individual. And so like you look at some of these YouTubers, they make $1 million, there are people that make over $20 million a year because they have their own channel. So like think of what some of these creators do is they think of themselves as HGTV, right? But they're not HGTV, you're paying, watching them through Comcast. Like you literally have your own channel. Can you imagine how much it would have cost, 20 years ago to have your own channel like that? It's insane the opportunity that people have. If you're willing to just put the work in, you've got an audience.
That even though I understand it, I know it, when you explain it like that again, you don't think about it as much. It's just unbelievable. Like you said, you have your own, with the ability to grow it, to have millions and millions of people watching you, right? Literally, the sky's the limit in terms of what you can grow, right? Depending on your niche, of course. But, you can have so many people, thousands and thousands and thousands of people watching you. And it's up to you what you can create. And you can create as much or as little. And whatever you want it to be, that's just, it's unbelievable the opportunity that people have these days. It's cool.
That's that's exactly right. Like you don't have to put a pitch together and you don't have to film a pilot and spend 5 figures just to get something up. Like you can go and do it with your iPhone. Like your iPhone cameras today are incredible. So yeah, it's pretty amazing what we have, the opportunities we have now.
Well, for people, I'll ask you again at the end, but give them a plug now. So what is your YouTube? What is both your Instagrams?
Yeah, thank you. So my YouTube is just my name. So Tyler Cauble, Cauble. And then my Instagram, really the one to follow is commercial_in_Nashville.
Okay. I'll put those links in the thing. And then YouTube, what's the YouTube?
YouTube's just Tyler Cauble.
Tyler Cauble. Okay, cool, awesome. So you said after a while, because you got so good at it, that you kind of worked your way out of a job. Was that the case? They had no more square feet to kind of lease out. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I mean, we were relatively stabilized, and so I just wasn't able to close as many deals as I was. And so I started. That's when I put that development deal together. And simultaneously, I started taking on tenant rep, which is basically businesses looking to lease space, and then third-party landlord work. So other property owners that owned property, I was helping them lease their space. And so, yeah, I mean, I did that for a couple of years. By the time I left, we'd finished those 42 townhomes, and I'd written a book called Open for Business, and it launched about a week before I left, and started my own firm. It had kind of gotten to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm doing all of this stuff. I'm basically running my own business. I might as well have my name on that door. So, about a week later after I launched the book, we opened up the Cauble Group.
So the townhomes, that was a project you were working for someone else on, or you were part owner of that company?
Yeah, so I was part owner of it, but I'd partnered with the company I was working for. Okay. So I wasn't technically in the development division. I was a commercial real estate broker. So what I did was I went and found this piece of dirt, got it under control, and then partnered with them on it. And so they were really my money. They were the big partner in it, right? It was my first development deal. But I walked it through everything. So that was a massive learning experience.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about how much you learn from that. It's just drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah. Maybe tell us a little bit about that. Like some of the you can't tell us everything because it's a lot, right? Yeah. But how does that process go? So you found the piece of land, like maybe talk us through how it works from on a high level from kind of start to finish.
Yeah, absolutely. So found the piece of dirt, negotiated with the seller to buy it, and got it under contract. And then that was when we approached our civil engineer and started doing all of the horizontal, site work and development, or at least preparing for that. We had to have full civil. Fortunately, the land was already fully entitled for what we wanted to do. We could actually build 57 units by right, but we just could not fit the units on there. And then, after we closed, we, basically got to work on the side work. So the company that I worked for also had its own in-house contracting arm. Okay. So it was very easy for us sitting in on the development meetings to look over at the project manager and be like, how much do you think that's going to cost? So, that really, really helped. But yeah, I mean, after that, one thing that you really realize is how much work goes into a project before a single shovel hits the dirt. I mean, it's so much. I mean, we probably worked on that for, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 months before you would have actually seen anything going on the site. Yeah. And then once you finish the site work, it's fast. Like it goes relatively fast. But from the day that you put a site under contract to the day that you break dirt, that's the majority of the work right there.
But then the fun starts, I guess, right? You see the house. Because until you break ground, you don't see anything, right? It's paperwork. It's all that other stuff that goes into it. But then once you see the buildings go up, I'm sure that's the exciting part, right?
That's the fun part.
Yeah,
because it's tangible. Like you actually feel like you've created something.
How fast? I'm always amazed at how fast houses go up here. I'll drive past a neighborhood, and then a few months later I'll pass, and it's like built out, and I'm like, wait, this wasn't here a few months ago. How is this whole neighborhood? How fast on average do you think it takes them from start to finish to build one house?
I mean, at the time we were building townhouse buildings anywhere from like 120 to 150 days, maybe 180. But like we were going fast. I mean, that was really fast. Some of these like bigger apartment complexes, they'll take 15 to 18 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just because they're so big.
Yeah. That's incredible to put a house together like that. But it's what a cool project to be involved in, especially when it's finished, right? And you can drive around and see everything that is finished. You must have a lot of pride with something like that.
Oh yeah. And a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. It's funny, man. Like it's funny driving on that site today and just being like, man, you could never tell how much hard work we had to put into this, you know, because like you just don't, you look at a neighborhood and you don't see that. But, you know, I look at the mailbox, I'm like, damn, we spent so much time just trying to figure out where we were going to put that damn thing, because the site was so tight. We were like, man, you know, we've got a sewer easement over here. We've got, you know, a curb cut in here. Where are we going to put this? It's funny, but like even down to those little details, you know, we had to work through that.
Yeah. I was going to say that. I'm sure it must be interesting, the puzzle itself, right? Where to put everything, where to put back each of the property. Like there must be so much stuff that goes into just that design alone, right? Where everything goes. It must be, it's ever changing as well, something like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, we had weekly construction meetings going over everything for 18 months.
That's fascinating. That's so cool. What is that property? Everything that neighborhood completely done? And
yep.
What did you do? Rent it, sell it? What was the end product?
So the original plan was to rent them out because we were getting $1.35 a foot in rents, and so my thought was, well, why don't we just rent it out and kind of sell it as a boutique, you know, multifamily deal, you know, a little 42-unit townhome deal. But then we got an offer to buy one, and, you know, these were 1,100 square feet, 1,105 square feet, 2 beds, 2.5 baths, just 2-story townhomes, very, very small, like a perfect millennial product.
Where is this again? What area is this in?
It's in Bellevue, so it's Southwest Nashville. And so there's a lot of younger families out there. It's 10, maybe 15 minutes from downtown. But, you know, we started selling them at like $230,000 to $240,000. And so you run that number, it's like well over $200 a foot. And at that time, you know, you were barely getting $200 a foot on nice, like new construction stuff. So we were like, wow, I mean, we can actually make some money selling all of these individually and probably do better selling them retail instead of packaging them up and flipping them to an investor. And so that's what we ended up doing. We actually ended up just selling all of them.
Oh, cool. So then where did you go from there? What was next? You started your own business from there, right? But
that's right.
What was the first part of your business? I know there's a few different arms now.
Yeah, so it was the commercial real estate brokerage. So we did leasing and sales, or we still do leasing and sales for office, retail, and industrial properties. And the reason I started with that side of it, it was 2018. Nashville had been in the longest economic upswing it had ever seen, and everybody thought the bottom was going to fall out. I was like, I'm going to do the one thing that has like no overhead. I can, you know, save up some money, and then when we do swing backwards, I could start buying things up and getting good deals. Well, in June of 2018, Amazon announces 5,000 jobs downtown. Ernst & Young announces 600 jobs downtown. Alliance Bernstein announces 1,500 jobs downtown. And all of a sudden, Nashville just catches fire. I mean, I'm starting to get calls from, you know, I got an Australian investor that was looking to get into the city. We had Chinese investors. I think that year, Canadian investors were some of the biggest. They were like number 2. Like from out of state, biggest investors in Nashville. So, you know, it's been interesting to see. So then that's when I started buying buildings. I had a client that had a building under contract, and his financing fell through. And so I had him assign it to another client of mine, and then his financing fell through. And so I had him assign it to me, and I bought it. And so I rolled my commission into it. It was the first building I ever bought. Rolled my commission into it and called a couple of investors and said, hey, you want to throw, you know, $50,000 each into this project? And, you know, they trusted me. I've been in the game for about 5 years at this point. They said, absolutely. So that's how I bought my first building, and then bought 3 more that year.
What was that first building? Was it an office, retail, industrial?
Yeah, it was a 6,000 square foot former bank up in Old Hickory Village on a corner. And so we actually ended up putting a pharmacy in there.
So how hard is it to turn a bank into a pharmacy?
Man, it wasn't actually that hard. All they had to do was come in there, and it was super cool. Like they just, you know, reconfigured the vault to hold all of their medicine. Mm-hmm. So, because, you know, they need a secure room anyway. And they already had a drive-through, right, which is perfect for a pharmacy. And so it was actually a super easy conversion. It was just, they kind of just moved in and, you know, cleaned the place up, and we're good to go.
I still have a hard time getting used to all the stuff that's drive-through here. In the UK, we have drive-through McDonald's and KFC, but that's about it. But you have drive-through liquor store, drive-through banks, drive-through pharmacies. You
guys don't have the space.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, definitely don't. And all I guess when I was asking that, I was imagining a bank in the UK as well, because the banks in the UK are all massive, big buildings. They're
Oh
certain
yeah.
type of buildings. Yeah.
Yeah. They've been there for 1,000 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and they wouldn't. I can't imagine them being a good fit for a pharmacy. So maybe that was my fault
Yeah.
for imagining. I was imagining the UK buildings. So then that year you said you bought two or three three more properties.
Three more.
What were those properties?
So another one was a little office building in North Nashville. One was a 12,000 square foot office building in South Nashville that we ended up converting into micro office units. And then the other one was a 28,000 square foot office building, which is actually where my office is today.
Okay. So you turned one into a micro office. Why did you guys turn it into a micro office? It was just made sense, or what was the business plan behind that?
Yeah, so it was in a part of town that had a very heavy Hispanic population, and my thought was there's not enough nice office space over here for the startup Hispanic businesses. And that was my investment thesis, and I said, let's go in here and renovate this, and we'll take, there was 2 floors that were a little over 6,000 square feet each, and we will take one of them was just a 6,000 square foot office. I was like, nobody's going to lease 6,000 square feet over here. So I basically took that, put new doors on all of the units, and just turned that one office into 12 with a shared kitchen and shared bathrooms. And that project ended up, so I sold my investors on that one on a 36-month timeline. And we ended up closing it out in 16 months, like sold, like done, leased up, and sold in 16 months.
Wow. So you flipped it essentially. You sold it. You filled it up and sold it.
Yeah, I mean, we were originally going to do the BRRRR, where as soon as it got stabilized, I was just going to put new debt on it and we were going to hold it. But it ended up getting a little small for me, okay. Which is funny, because when I bought it, it was the biggest building I'd bought at the time. But by the time it was done, 16 months later, it was too small. And it was on the wrong side of town. I know what side of town I've got to invest in now. I'm an East Nashville boy, and this is my favorite part. So I focus mostly over here now.
Okay, yeah, that's smart as well. That's understanding your investment criteria, right? Because once you kind of understand that, it's easy to kind of make a plan and you kind of stick to it from there, right? It makes a big difference. And then the other one was what was the other one? Sorry, I have a terrible memory.
Yeah, no worries, man. It's a 28,000 square foot office building where my office is today.
Okay. So, and then was that empty? What was the story on that property?
So it was about 40% occupied. It's one of the best deals I've ever negotiated because I basically bought it for free. These guys owned it that, they invested in hotels. They were not big office guys. And so they honestly didn't know what to do with it. And so I said, well, look, here's what I do. Here's my track record. I'm a value add guy. I basically come in, I'll fix this building up. I'll fill it up with tenants. I'm going to take your $2.2 million building to a $6 million building. And they were like, okay, cool. And so I just negotiated. I said, here's my fee for that. Here's how much equity I'm going to take to do that. And they were all over it. And so, we've put a lot of work into it. I took it over at 40% occupancy and very quickly took it to well over 60 in under 12 months. And so, here we are today. We're finishing most of the renovations on it. And it's the best. It's one of the best office buildings in East Nashville. Wow. We're right across the street from a hospital. And so we're starting to get a lot of activity because it had just sat vacant for a while because it was old and like nobody wanted to lease that. So, once we're done with renovations, it'll fill up.
So who funds the renovation on a project like that? Is that down to you? Is it the current owners?
The bank does. Yeah. So we went and negotiated with that, with the bank. If we hit certain occupancy rates, they'll release a certain amount of money. So that worked out really well. So I just went out and leased up some space to tenants and just said, look, here's the vision for the building. Here's all of our renderings. Here's what it's going to look like. I'm going to lease it to you right now at a lower rate than what it'll cost when I'm done with that. If you're interested, like, let's go. And so we had a handful of people interested.
Oh, awesome. And how's office holding up in Nashville? Are the office?
It's actually doing It's doing really well. Yeah, I mean, the only issue that we see in office space today is really Class A.
Mm,
Those are your bigger corporate tenants that have more liability that, they can get in trouble or whatever. And they also have the money and the attorneys to tell landlords like, sorry, I'm not paying, make me. Whereas your more local credit, your mom and pop type of businesses, they don't want to work from home.
mm,
Nobody wants to work from home and, get distracted by their kids or their dog or, your wife coming to ask you to do stuff while you're supposed to be on Zoom calls or whatever. Like it's just so distracting to be at home. You could turn on Netflix and tune out for 2 hours. Like that doesn't work. So, I mean, that's my team. My team has been coming in the entire time, and almost every single one of our office buildings, we've collected, not almost every single one of our office buildings, we've collected 100% of our rents through this, and we haven't had anybody leave.
wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. Yeah, because
That's kind of the opposite of what you like to hear in the news, right? Because everybody in the news is like, oh, office space is dead. Office is dead. No one's ever going to work from an office ever again. And that's just not even remotely true. It's just people are hyping it up.
yeah, I don't buy that either. Just because you have the option to work from home doesn't mean that you want to work from home, right? Because then there's a few things, like you said, you have your kids distracting, your wife distracting you. You can easily go sit on the couch and put on Netflix. So, some people are productive, some people aren't, but I don't think it's as people acting like, yeah, office dead, done, no question about it. Office is never coming back. People are always going to work from home. You can work remotely. People are going to do that. But I don't want my home to turn into my work as well. Because then also, if you're a driven person, when do you stop? If you can always work, when do you stop?
And it's kind of nice to have that mentality switch, right? Like if you wake up in the morning, you take a shower, you get dressed and you leave the house, like you're in a different place mentally. Whereas if you wake up, maybe you take your time, you go to the couch wearing sweatpants, you turn on the news and you open up your laptop, like you're just not there. And that's been my experience with it. And I think what we've really learned from all of this is that we can be remote or we can be flexible with our remote work capabilities, but I don't think that it's going to remotely change how much office space is needed. I mean, there's still going to be demand for it.
No, I completely agree. I'm definitely on that side because, like you said, you don't want work is one thing and life. You don't want your work and your home life to be intertwined, right? Because that's what happens when you work from home. You're at home, you're at work, and when you're at work, you're at home, right? And there's no separation, like you mentioned. You don't go out that front door, make that drive or that commute, and leave it behind you, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's kind of nice to, my commute's like 5 minutes. Because I live in East Nashville too, but like even just that 5 minutes of getting in the car and leaving the office and going home, like it changes your mind,
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree. So you said you're working on some cool projects right now, right? You told me before we started recording. What are the cool projects that you're currently working on?
Yeah, so we've 2021 is going to be a good year. I mean, in September and October, the commercial real estate brokerage put 4.5 times more under contract than we did in 2019. And I say that because it's to put in perspective how the commercial real estate market is moving right now.
Mm-hmm.
Back in March and April, it was dead. May was the worst month we've ever had, but it picked up so quickly, and it's taking off. So 2021 will be a good year. But yeah, so we just closed this week on a car wash here in East Nashville. Really excited about that. We're going to retrofit it into micro commercial units, which is going to be really cool. And we haven't even announced it yet. We've got 3 of the bays committed. We are doing at the end of this month, I closed on 3.34 acres over off of Dickerson Pike, which is one of the major corridors in East Nashville. We're going to do a 57,000 square foot food hall and event venue with a live music stage kind of sitting around this lawn. So it's really going to be about community, but also micro units. So we'll have micro office, micro retail, micro restaurant with a view of the skyline. So it's going to be one of the most unique projects in East Nashville for sure. And then in early January, mid-January, I'm closing on a 9-story office building in Chattanooga. I have been trying to get into the Chattanooga market for a little while and finally found an off-market opportunity that the deal screams. We're buying it for $40 a foot. It would cost me $200 a foot to build this thing back. So we're going to do kind of what I did with that other one, of that other office building where we did a mix of micro office units with larger office space. We'll do a cafe on the floor. So it'll be one of the better office buildings in Chattanooga. And then in Madison, which is a neighborhood that's adjacent to East Nashville, we're closing at the end of January on about 32 acres at a zone mixed use, which is one of the highest densities that you can get in Nashville. And we're master planning a mixed use community. So that'll have over 1,000 residential units, 360,000 square feet of office space, and 160,000 square feet of retail. So we're basically building downtown Madison.
All by yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have some partners in that. So that's a big project. But yeah, nothing cool.
Awesome.
Let's take it slow.
So when you say micro units, what do you mean? I understand by micro office, but what other micro units are you talking about?
Yeah, so like micro retail and micro restaurant, like we're leasing restaurants at 400 square feet each. And it's basically a kitchen with a walk-up counter. And that's all that most of these people need. They're highly optimized for to-go. There's outdoor seating. But it allows, smaller restaurateurs to just test concepts without having to, spend 6 or 7 figures to build out a restaurant, commit to a 10-year lease, and hope and pray that it works.
The car wash is interesting to me. Well, it's all interesting to me, but the car wash, to completely change something like that, was that your vision? Who came up with that idea, and how, like, what made you guys think of that this would even be a good fit?
So it's a pure COVID baby. So we were looking at it before this, and we had plans for an Airbnb, like 6 Airbnb units, and it was going to be a cool little boutique hotel. But, something just wasn't right about it. It just didn't quite fit. And then I started looking at it as, okay, well, what if we did 6 micro office spaces, little 390 square foot offices? And we just couldn't make that work either. And then COVID hit, and I started getting calls from restaurants that were like, look, we just want a ghost kitchen. We don't want to lease a 2,000 square foot space. We just want something under 1,000 feet. And I was like, well, nothing like that exists in Nashville. So good luck. And I started getting enough of those calls where I was like, you know what? I've got to figure this out. And then for whatever reason, it just clicked in my brain. And I called my partner who's an architect. I was like, hey, man, tell me if I sound crazy, but what if we put 6 restaurants in the 6 car wash bays? And he goes, dude, I've got a plan very similar to that. I was going to do it another car wash. And so it was just kind of, one of those like, fate kind of moments where we're like, oh, obviously this is what we're supposed to be doing. And so I kind of floated the idea to some hospitality guys. He did the same. And the feedback we got was insane. I mean, everybody was like, I want a bay. Give me a bay. So, all the parking there is 10 minutes only. It's highly optimized for to-go and delivery. There's outdoor picnic tables, with umbrellas, but there's no, like, you don't go inside. It's just a kitchen with a walk-up counter.
Wow. That's such an wow. So depending on how this one goes, could that be something that you roll forward into other areas?
Absolutely. I mean, we're branding it. We're hoping to take that to multiple cities.
Wow.
Well, we're already looking at several other locations.
I'm in Vegas if you need someone to help you with that here in Vegas.
Hey, grab me a car wash. Let's do it.
Well, that's the thing, right? You never know. Like it when you're able to repurpose something like that, it gives you all kinds of options, because if a certain area might not be good for a car wash, but it might be great for, like you said, these micro units for.
That's exactly right.
Man, that's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, it's fun.
There's some cool projects, man. I like the projects you take on. It's really, there's such interesting projects, right? And probably that's why you take them on, right? It's because it excites you and it kind of gets you going, I'm guessing.
That's it, man. I mean, you can make millions in real estate doing anything, right? And so at some point it's got to be about what do you really enjoy doing, right? Like I have to work on projects that just make me fired up to get out of bed in the morning. Like I wake up at 4:30, 4:30, maybe 5, because I'm so excited to just get to work and start working again. And that's like naturally my body wakes up at 4:35, not like an alarm's going off. So, it's those kinds of projects that just get you excited. Like you want to go talk to people about them, and you're always like, energized and fired up. So Yeah, that's what I'm always trying to do, something unique. That's the other thing too, is like everybody's done everything else, right? So like, let's go do something that, hasn't been done before.
Yeah, cool, man. Cool story, man. This is really cool. What do you think is next for you? Apart from obviously those 3 projects that you mentioned, after that or above and beyond that, what do you think is next for you?
Yeah, I think we'll continue developing. I'm going to grow my portfolio. I was talking to one of my partners the other day. He owns 1,000 doors down in Austin, and I was just like, you know what? We need to buy 25,000 doors. That's what we need. We need 25,000 doors. We'll both be worth $100 million each, and I think that's when we'll have made it. We'll have made it, right? Like,
maybe
go buy 25,000 apartment units. So I'm gonna start trying to grow that side of it. So we've got an offer out on 126 units here in Nashville, and I'll continue doing the value add and the development side. The ultimate goal is to put the most architecturally significant tower on the Nashville skyline. So that's the penultimate vision for me.
To build or to own?
To build and to own.
Okay, yeah.
To have and to hold.
That's fascinating. I spoke to a guy not long ago who owned the Rockefeller Center in Cleveland, I think. So I was like, oh,
nice.
Great. Yeah, that's a pretty significant piece of...
that's a cool building.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's to be able to say that you own that. So that's a cool goal, man. I think you need bigger goals. I'm just kidding. Those are...
yeah. I want to own the first skyscraper on Mars.
Yeah. You'll have to go there yourself, but to build it probably. But that's
right. I'll just call it Elon. I'm sure he'll find it.
Well, cool story, man. Really, this is just fascinating stuff to me. This is so cool what you've been able to. I'm really interested in everything you've done. But this show is called Wrestling with Real Estate, so I always like to ask wrestling-related real estate questions. So the first one isn't quite that, but it's just a bit of fun. One is, what would your wrestling name be? If you picked a wrestling name for yourself, what would it be, you think?
I'm going to go with The Developer. Okay.
I like that. Yeah. Coming to a town near you. I like that.
That's right.
So every wrestler has a special move, something that they're really good at. When they hit that special move, the match is over because it's their biggest strength. What is your special move in real estate, you think?
I'd have to go with the check cash. I'm going to cash those checks.
But in terms of like networking, finding deals, leasing, what do you think your biggest strength is? Underwriting?
Yeah, I would say honestly, my biggest strength is that I don't ever get scared, and I feel like fear really holds so many people back from making decisions. And I don't ever get, filled with fear. So I think that's probably my biggest strength. That's
a pretty big strength. Yeah, definitely. I think me included, a lot of people do get scared. So that might mess up a question I have for you later, but it's all good. What's been the biggest body slam you've taken? So it's something that's one of the biggest setbacks.
Yeah. So the biggest body slam I've ever taken was I was working on a development deal with a partner that I trusted because I'd known him for a very, very long time. And so I was young, I didn't have any money. And so because of that, I couldn't afford to pay an attorney to put together an operating agreement, nor did I really, have the know-how, but I also trusted him. And when we finished that project, he basically decided not to pay me. And I was 25 and it was $250,000. And that was life-changing money at that time. So that was a huge body slam.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
But I learned a great lesson out of that. Don't trust anybody and get everything in writing.
Yeah, it's amazing and unfortunate how money changes things, right? It changes people's perceptions and people's.
It's wild. Yeah, he basically told me to sue him if I wanted my money, and I was like, man, you've got all the money in the world. Like I can't compete against that. You're gonna have attorneys lined up. It's
your friend as well, right? That's kind of it wasn't just someone you went into business with as a friend. Yeah, it sucks. I'm sorry, man, but
yeah,
hey, you're stronger than ever, right? So you always bounce back, and I think that's
exactly.
That's a common theme with everyone that's successful. So you alluded to this one. You might not have an answer for this one, but was there a moment that you were standing on the top rope, getting ready to jump, but you were too scared? What was it, and how did you overcome it? And if there's not, maybe talk about why there wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, it was buying my first building, right? Like, man, I listened to every podcast. I read every book. I talked to every real estate developer and investor in town. By the time I bought my first building, I probably could have written a book on how to buy buildings, because all I did was study, study, study. Well, maybe if I read that next book, I'll know how to do it. Right. And so I was always just scared to just buy the building and actually do it. But man, once I finally I think I got sick of myself not doing it. I was like, dude, this is what you want to do for the rest of your life. Like, you've got to just jump out eventually. And you know what? We'll take a leap off the cliff and we'll build that parachute on the way down. We'll figure it out. Yeah. What's the worst it can do? You're broke anyway. Like, what are you going to do? Go broke again? Like, who cares? Like, let's go buy the building. And it was, I mean, seriously, I went from a zero net worth to $1 million net worth within 12 months because of that one decision. Because I bought 3 more buildings. Yeah. So that was it, man. It just getting myself over that hump. That was my biggest fear.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of people's fear, to be honest with you, because it's the unknown, right? And once you do it, you realize,
it's so easy. Yeah,
easy for you, but it isn't as bad as you think, right? It isn't like
exactly
complete disaster where everything goes completely wrong, right? It's just like that proof of concept and that everything's going to be okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Cool, man. Well, as we're wrapping up, before we kind of say goodbye or whatever, where can people find out more? Plug everything you have: Instagram, all those Instagram, the book, the YouTube, the company website, everything. Plug everything so people can find out more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So if, my website's tylercauble.com. You can actually find under the media tab, you can find the YouTube channel. You can find our blog. We're very active on the blog. I've got a podcast coming soon, so it'll have information on that there. The YouTube channel is just under my name, Tyler Cauble. We do weekly videos on different investment strategies, leasing and management tips, market updates, and so much more. We put a lot of time and effort into those videos. I'm probably biased, but I think they're the best videos out there on how to become a commercial real estate investor. And if you want to get in touch with me, Instagram is by far the best way. I respond to every DM I get. So if you have any kind of questions on office, retail, industrial, whatever, shoot me a DM. It's at commercial in Nashville with underscores in between the words.
Nice. I'll link all that in the description and the show notes below. Do you even reply to the people that can tell you can get 12,000 extra followers in the next 2 days? Do you reply to those as well?
I reply to them by deleting those and laughing.
Don't you love those spams?
It's great because they're like, hey, we'll show you how to get 50,000 real followers, and then you look at their account and they have 200 followers, and you're like, that's not how that works.
Yeah, that's amazing. You can always tell as well the people who've done that, because they'll have 10,000 followers and then a picture and they'll have 3 likes or something and 0 comments, and they're like,
yeah, one like, and then you go into their followers and you scroll down just a little bit and you click on one person, and that one person's got like 2 followers and is following 5,000 people. Like, man, this is so obvious.
Cool. Well, hey, thank you so much, Tyler. It's been a fascinating talk, man. I really enjoyed it. It's just so unique what you're doing and your strategy and your success. I'm so happy to see you doing that. It's just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. So thank you so much for making the time, man. This was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, Barry, thank you so much. This was great. I appreciate you having me on.